Hello, hello, beautiful people. Mic check 1, 2. From my backstage team, can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the 5th episode of Real Time with Meroxa. I can't believe this is the 5th one so far. These live streams have been super fun to host, and I've had the pleasure to have awesome conversations with awesome people. And today I'm excited to introduce to you two people who I've gotten the pleasure to work with for a very long time, and that is Lovro and Lou. So, Lou, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Sure. My name is Lyubo, or people call me Lou. I've been with Meroxa for about a year. I'm on the engineering team working on the Meroxa platform. Before that, I worked at Salesforce for about 10 years, of which 5 or 6 years I spent on the Heroku data team, where we worked on managing data services, starting with Apache Kafka. And before that, I mostly spent time doing research in distributed system, operating systems, and so forth. Thanks.
Lou, I love hearing your story every time you tell it. Lovro, how about you? Could you tell us about your wonderful background as well?
Sure. So my name is Lovro. I am a software engineer working full-time here at Meroxa on the Conduit project. Previously, my background is not as amazing as Lou's, so I'll keep it short. It's been a couple of companies working with mostly microservices here and there, also with data, with Kafka and so on. So, but the most exciting stuff is happening here at Meroxa.
Lovro, it is exciting. And while you say that there are better days ahead, that's it. That's all it means. We're all on the same team here. Okay, sweet. And I really would love to kind of kick off the conversation by talking about why are we here today? Because I'm super excited because we've been working super hard on something to share with all of you. So Lovro is an engineer on a new project called Conduit. And Lou is the first user of the Conduit product. So really what we wanted to do here today was have a conversation about this new thing that Moroccos is launching today called Conduit. Why did we make it? What does it do? The future of it, a little bit, how does it work? And kind of peel back the details. And really the hope is that after this conversation, you join aboard. The project is open source. We really want you to get involved. So let's begin. To kick us off, Lovro, I would love for you to kind of give your outline and pitch in one-liner of what's Conduit.
Yeah, so Conduit is a data integration tool that lets you move data from A to B in real time. It's written in pure Go, has no external dependencies, so that means it's shipped in as a single binary. It can be extended using connector plugins to communicate with virtually any third-party data provider. And it comes with a UI. It provides observability out of the box, so it comes with batteries included.
So one thing I do want to reiterate is that it's open source. So it's free and it's available. I'm going to pull an Apple. You can go see it and use it right now. That's the old school Apple when they would actually launch products on the same day. So Conduit is now this tool to allow me to build pipelines. And I would say, Lovro, why do we build this? You know, where did this project start? Can you kind of peel back the background a little bit about it?
Sure. So with Conduit, we want to kind of the mission of Meroxa is to commoditize data connectivity, right? So moving data from A to B in real time or near real time should not be a difficult problem. Right?
Mhm.
Should be easy for anyone to do. And the existing tools are mostly targeted towards data engineers or data analysts, right? So we wanted to make something that's easy to develop with, easy.
It wouldn't be a live stream without connection issues. However, thank you, Lovro. Could you give me some examples? So, what kind of pipelines would I build with Conduit today, or what's the intended use there?
Sure. So right now we have a couple of connectors ready. These are, for example, the Postgres connector, Kafka connector. We have a file connector, and so to take an example, what you could do is create a pipeline where you listen to changes in a Postgres database. So every insert, update, or delete in a table will be detected as it happens, and the data will be sent through on, for example, into an S3 bucket.
Mm-hmm. So there, what I could do is I can take Conduit, download the binary, spin it up, point it to my Postgres, and point that to some destination, and then listen to all the changes that are coming from Postgres, and continuously have that stream to the destination.
That's exactly right.
And I think because I'm loaded here and I know a bunch of the super features and questions, but it's also cool like it happens in real time. Like that's what the beautiful thing about it is. So Lou, we have you on the call here because Meroxa decided to set out on this journey to build Conduit, and really it's so software developers had a better tool set to move data from one place to another. And I love having you a part of this conversation because you are currently implementing Conduit within Moroccos Infrastructure. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I've spent the last few months integrating the Conduit product in the Meroxa platform, and just going back to what Meroxa does, it's supposed to reduce the time from building pipelines from hours, months, weeks to minutes, right? So the priority is for us to deliver the service in an efficient way and with a great user experience. And so far, the way the platform is structured is we have a data plane where we run all the connectors isolated, and we have the control plane where the command and control happens of building the pipeline, structuring them, and then monitoring and so forth. And the way the platform is structured right now, we are the pipelines themselves as structures are composed of connectors. Now, when we contrast that to Conduit, and essentially how we've designed the platform, Conduit is somewhat a perfect fit, and it's perfect fit because we designed it to be like that. To to how we plan to use it. It essentially, as Lovro mentioned earlier, it's barely included. So it has a UI, it has the sense of pipelines, the structure of pipelines, it has processors and connectors with it, which it maps really well to how we see users using those tools to move data back and forth. And because of the way it's deployed and it's run, it makes the operational experience so much simpler. Right now, our data plane is composed of multiple moving parts, notably Kafka, and that adds certain operational complexity to how we manage that. Reducing that essentially reduces blast radius and so on in how we can provide reliable service.
Yeah, so it's really like we're building this platform that enables developers to kind of build these full-fledged data applications, really. And you're on the platform team building this platform. So you spend a lot of your time in Kafka and in Kafka Connect. And just to kind of reiterate, so some of the things that you were looking for were, easy deployment, following good DevOps best practices, the and actually the interface, the ability to control a pipeline with software, and then these are the requirements we had kind of going into the Conduit project and what we set to hope to solve. Lovro, would you like to add anything there?
No. You're good.
Oh, Okay, sweet. So, Lou, you mentioned Kafka, um, and I think it's a very common thing to know that Kafka is a tool that allows me to build streaming data integration systems. So, in what instance where I use just Conduit, or what instance may I use Conduit plus Kafka? Uh, could you walk me
Yeah,
through the thinking process?
yeah, for sure. I I think one way to describe Kafka in the sense of data movement is it's a durable buffer. It's more than that, but in general, in high level, that's how we see it. You have the source where you take the data from the source, you put it into the buffer, and then you get on the other side. And at this point, that buffer can be essentially assigned to whatever Kafka settings are, but you don't have much control over the back pressure. In order to have the quotas with the back pressure, you kind of have to go in and modify Kafka, which adds a more operational burden to how you maintain those settings and the complexity around them. With Conduit, you don't really have that. The back pressure is built within the system itself. It has no dependency to Kafka. It does have a Kafka plugin so that you can have a Kafka as a destination or a source, but it simplifies of what your expectations from the systems are. The other side of this is data retention. If you don't have the requirement to retain that data, or like because in Kafka you do, it is written to disk, it's distributed, and so forth. Conduit allows you to not do that. It's essentially you're just driving the slide towards different use cases as you develop your application.
Yeah, so it's more like it's a tool you can use by itself to move data back and forth, but you can also pop it into your existing, event streaming architecture with Kafka to move data back and forth between in and out of Kafka as well.
Yeah, I think another thing to highlight is the optionality of it. Is that you have
Mhm.
the option to have that versus with Kafka when you're using Kafka. When your system is designed Kafka centric, then that's what you have, right? Versus with Conduit, where you can use Kafka and not use Kafka in this case to achieve the
Yeah,
goals.
yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And one thing that you mentioned too is just kind of this easy deployment. And Lovro, I'm going to put you on the spot here. So Conduit is built in Go. Uh, talk to us. How does that work a little bit, and why do we choose Go?
So the benefit of using Go is first and foremost, like you get a single binary, right? Because the existing systems that you have, for example, if it's written in Java, you're gonna have to have the JVM, or you're gonna have to set up some stuff, right? So with Conduit, it's a single binary. You download it, you run it, that's it, right? At the same time, we are using a plugin architecture, which means that connectors don't have to be written, inside of Conduit. You don't have to extend Conduit by changing the code, but you can write an external plugin which Conduit will run as a separate process and talk with it via gRPC. Because the communication is in gRPC, this also means that plugins don't have to be necessarily written in Go. You can write them in any other language. So yeah, that's the single binary part, right?
Yeah.
What are the other benefits?
What are the connectors that we have today?
The connectors that we have today. So we have 5 of them right now.
Mm-hmm.
One is the generator connector, which just generates random data. This is mostly for some demos or for testing stuff. But the other 4 are more useful. We have the file connector. We have a Kafka connector, an S3 connector, and a Postgres connector.
Oh, awesome. And then I guess what's the plan? What are the connectors that are up next? Because, for a lot of data products like Conduit, really the kind of does it fit my use cases based on does it have the connector that of the thing that we're using? So kind of what's the plan there?
Sure. So the way we decide how to tackle what's the next connector that we should tackle is based on the needs of our community and based on the needs of our customers, right? So we have already heard requests for connectors like MySQL connector, a Vitess connector, a Redshift connector. But besides that, we're also working on a wrapper around Kafka Connect connectors. So that would allow us to bring all their connectors into the Conduit ecosystem.
So basically you wrap a Kafka connector, expose a gRPC endpoint, and then now you have a Conduit plugin.
That's it.
That's magical. Look at software. Oh, that's beautiful. So Lou, you spoke a little bit around the ease of deployment in Conduit, and it's kind of related to this binary thing. So like right now, how are we deploying Conduit into our infrastructure, or what's the plan there?
Right now, in our data plane, we leverage Kubernetes to manage the infrastructure, and in integrating Conduit with that was fairly easy in how we're doing it. It also allows us to isolate different instances depending on categories. We can have a different Conduit instance for pipeline, per account, depending on our need and the size of the pipelines. And it definitely simplifies things. Another thing, Conduit in general is pretty stateless, so it fits in that model of running stateless services in Kubernetes, and we do have the option to actually add some persistence to that and via the file state or database.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a perfect segue, because what I have up here for all of the viewers who are viewing today is the Conduit architecture. And I think, Lovro, if you're up for it, would you like to walk us through some of these? So just to kick off the stage while Lovro's thinking a bit. So Conduit architecture, we really want to do a really great job at kind of making sure things are documented and that it's easy for you to extend, build, and learn how to adopt Conduit. So what you're looking at here is a diagram of all of the different layers of all of the components of Conduit and how they interact with each other. So this top one here is the API layer. So Lovro, what's this one do?
Right, so at the top, the API layer, that's where the user requests come in, right? So Conduit provides two APIs. One is the gRPC API and the HTTP API.
Mm-hmm.
But both of them have feature parity because the HTTP API is forwarding requests to the gRPC handlers. So when the request comes in, the handler then calls stuff in the orchestration layer. The orchestration layer is a relatively thin layer that basically takes care of transactions and makes sure that the entity management services that are below it can stay independent of each other. And now in the core layer, that one is split up into the pipeline engine and into 3 entity management services based on the main entities in Conduit, right? So we have pipelines, we have connectors, and processors. So a pipeline is generally the first thing you create in Conduit. So once you have a pipeline, you can add connectors to it, which are responsible for either reading the data from a third-party source or sending the data to a third-party destination. And if needed, you can also add processors to the pipeline, which are responsible for transforming the data or filtering it out.
So Conduit has baked-in transforms as well.
Exactly.
Oh, that's nice. That's super nice, because when you move data from one place to another, the very first thing you're going to want to do is make it look different. Okay. The pipeline engine.
Right. So the pipeline engine, this is kind of like an internal layer, and it's not visible to the user outside. Right. It's basically a bunch of nodes, where each node runs in its own Go routine, and then communicates with other nodes in Go channels. So right now we arrange these nodes into a directed acyclic graph, so into a DAG, right? But we could do much more complicated constellations here. So yeah, basically that's the internal representation of a running pipeline.
Oh, nice.
I just wanted to add something, Lovro, and I think that's interesting because I think there's a lot of power in that in the pipeline subsystem there, and that has to do with the different ways how data can traverse that DAG, and specifically a processor can be used to embed business logic, so that your part of the application can essentially be imported and be part of the pipeline rather than extract data and put it back in. So I was hoping Lovro would tell us more about this, because it's really one of super cool parts of Conduit.
Right. So a pipeline basically, as I said, you have some sources on the start. You have some processors in the middle, and destinations on the other side, right? And if you have multiple sources, what we do then is we add a fan in node, which means that every message that comes from different sources has to go through this node, and it's goes into one stream, so to say. At that point, for example, you can also add a processor which works on every message and does something to a record, like it calls an API, or it enriches that record, or it drops it completely, right? It can filter it out as well. But once it does something to that record, changes it, transforms it, it sends it out to the next node, right? So that node is its own component, and you could do anything with it. So as Lou said, for example, you can do some business logic in that processor.
This is making for like some really good foundational components for a pipeline tool.
Yeah, I just also wanted to highlight that the processors are not just going to be written in Go. There's another extension which is being work in progress, and that is a JavaScript engine to write transforms in. How far are we along that, Lovro? How's it going?
That's right. So I forgot about that again. Yeah. So ideally, these nodes are kind of written in Go. So this means that Conduit is shipped with these nodes. You don't have to go and write them yourself, right? You can, of course, go fork Conduit, create your own node specific for your use case, write it in Go, and it'll do whatever you want it to do. But you don't have to do that. We'll provide a JavaScript transform, which means that you'll be able to write JavaScript code on the fly, and it will be executed each time a message goes through it. What I'm talking in the future tense, because it's not yet there completely. We hope to get it into the next release, but let's see if we can manage to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to note. Like this Conduit point, this is 0.1, right? This is the .1 release. So this is a journey. There's much more to come. And I love you asked about the future, Lou. So Lovro, so right now we can definitely move data from one place to another because that's what Conduit's for. So what are you excited about for the future of the project? Like what pumps you about what's coming down the line?
Yeah, so as you said, Conduit is right now in version 0.1. So this is the first release. It's a bit rough around the edges right now. But so we have plans, of course, to stabilize the core functionalities. But apart from that, we are also working on new features, right? So from the new features, what I'm excited about is the plugin SDK. We're going to provide a plugin SDK written in Go, which will hopefully make the connector plugin development as easy as possible. Again, we can, of course, write plugins also in other languages because the interface in which Conduit communicates with the plugin is in gRPC, so it's not tied to Go, right? But we will provide a plugin SDK to make this easier for developing a connector plugin in Go. The other feature that we are also pouring a lot of effort in is supporting the OpenCDC format. So to have one format basically that ensures that all the connectors know how to work with it and ensures interoperability between any pair of source and destination connectors.
Yeah, and I want to even talk about that because that's super important too, because each source is listening from changes to whatever the upstream data source is. So if it's a file, every time the file changes, that sends a message into the pipeline or an event. Postgres, whenever something changes in the replication log, that's an event. The S3, when the bucket changes, that's an event. And when you're capturing all of these changes from all of these different types of data source, the way that we internally in Conduit represent that change is super critical because the data has to be moved from one place to another. So having that intermediate format really gives us a lot of power. I'm really super excited about OpenCDC. And how about you, Lou? What are you excited about for the future of the Conduit project?
Are we all back now?
Yes. Lou, what makes you excited about the future of Conduit? What are you looking forward to? I think Restream is having some technical difficulties.
I think so too.
This is the beauty of having a remote team and around the world live stream.
So eventually.
You back now, Lou?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sweet. So Lovro and I were talking about the plugin interface, OpenCDC. So you being the first and most important, Conduit developer so far, what about Conduit are you excited for to see down the line?
I think the gRPC interface to that will help us run Kafka connectors will be really cool, because it will complement it will help us sort of simplify our infrastructure of how we run connectors, but also complement existing offerings while Conduit keeps on growing. I think that's pretty cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing how other users will use Conduit with regards to how they embed use in their applications. Do they embed more processors? What kind of connectors? What kind of topology they build out of that? It's going to be super interesting, because it provides that availability to use the tooling in that way. While with other tools, we've seen some sort of guardrails that are limiting the expression of these topologies. So that's going to be pretty interesting, and then how that translates to the Moroccos platform with regards to what the customers can do with that flexibility is super exciting as well.
Yeah, I think what Conduit is offering and what the project is doing is super awesome, and I'm very excited that it's open source, mostly because when a software engineer sits down to develop infrastructure today, right? It used to be just you'll have an application, a database, and a cache, and that's it. And you just had to write code to sync the data between those things. Now, today, I might be using Planet Scale and Vercel, and I need to push stuff into HubSpot. And now our data infrastructure is so expanded. How do we immediately run into two problems? It's how do we now build software on top of that? And then the other one is how do we get all the data in one place? And that's really the tool that I think Conduit is attacking. And that's what really makes me excited, is because now that we're building all of these small services that are pulling and pushing data between places, software engineers, we need better tooling there to help us manage that. So what I would love to talk about now is how to get started today. So if you're checking out the live stream, we're super happy to have you. If you go to GitHub, go to conduit.io, Conduit, you can check out the code, download the binary, start building a pipeline. And most importantly, we are in GitHub discussions. So this is super important if you have a plugin or a connector and you're like, I really want to support this database or this data store or this service. Let us know. We're super interested to see what you all think in the community. And the other thing too is, from a technical standpoint, if you would like to get involved in building plugins and building connectors, like Lovro mentioned, we're looking at building out our plugin SDK. You can get involved. This is an open source project. We want to build this out in the open. We want to make this super public. We want to be true to the open source mantra and really build a good tool for software engineers that changes the world of data integration. Before we hop off, Lou, Lovro, do you have any lasting words for all of the people about Conduit?
I would just like to say, as you said, come, try it out, give us feedback, give us, something to work with, so that we can make it even a better product.
Yeah, ditto. It would be great if we can get more feedback about the project and like how, essentially, on our opinionated way of how data should be processed within it, and tell us about what connectors you need. Tell us about your data topology of how you move data. Because I know software engineers use data. They write code that changes data from one format to another. They use databases. They use views, all that stuff. We'd like to see how we can simplify it, like how we can help with that too.
Yeah, the thought that I had the other day was, marketing teams and data engineering team and data analysts use data to answer questions. whereas software engineers use data to build features. And there's a slight difference in those two use cases that requires a whole new tool. So thank you all so much for joining us, hearing about Conduit. Can't wait to hear what you think. We really appreciate your time, love, energy, and attention. And this is the end of the 5th episode of Real Time with Meroxa. I hope you all have a beautiful day. Peace out.